Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to the Champions Corner, the series where we get to interview the champion from all the Grand Opens held around the world. So again, if you do top a Grand Open, feel free to reach out to us. And we are joined by Alex, the greatest Blandin, fresh off his win from Chile. Hey, Alex, how you doing today?
Pretty good. Can't complain. It's a nice day out. It's 75 degrees with a breeze. My ideal day. You guys can write that down in case you want to know some things about me. So
Perfect date weather, exactly what we're hearing.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves for those that might not know you from Force of Will or Naruto, or there's a list of games that you've played in the past. So go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself.
So my name's Alex Blandin. I'm from the great state of New Hampshire. Live free or die, baby. So I started playing card games back in, I don't know if you want to count this as playing, but I started playing in 2002 when a little set called The Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon came out. And I didn't start playing competitively, but I played Yu-Gi-Oh! With my brother and stuff. I got into competitive probably around 2008, 2009 when the Naruto CCG came out. And I really started traveling for events right when I turned about 17, 18. My parents didn't really let me travel before then because of school and everything. And then after Naruto died, I went to Force of Will. After Force of Will, I played like a little bit of Argent Saga. I actually worked for them for a bit, doing design work. And now here I am. I guess I played Runeterra too for like 2 years. And then here I am at Battle Spirits. So I've been playing card games competitively for, I'd say, just shy of 15 years now.
Yeah, definitely a long time, and like many of us, right?
Yeah.
We when back in the big three, as they're called, Magic, Pokemon, or Yu-Gi-Oh, you started with one of them. Maybe you've branched out since then, maybe you haven't, just depending on what area that you live in. If they're well adjusted to either Bushy Road games or other games that have popped in over the years. But generally, you'll find that for card players, we do like to play more than one game once we get out of that first branch, and then it's just kind of into the pits from there with how deep you go into it. So you mentioned that, like myself, you're living in the States and you decided to make the long trek down. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, what made you decide to go and just the overall journey, right? Because I'm sure that was not a short flight by any stretch of the imagination.
So, for those of you who knew me from Force of Will, I used to travel all over. I love traveling, and unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but fortunately, I'm married now. The unfortunate part of that is I have a wife at home. So, unlike when I used to travel, where I'd spend like 4 or 5 days there and do the local stuff, I don't get to do that anymore because I can't. My wife can't really travel. She's from a different country, and she has to get a visa if she wants to come with me. So it's a huge process. So I don't like to leave her and my dog at home for a whole week by themselves. So now I still like to travel, but when I travel now, it's only for 2 or 3 days, as opposed to maybe 5, 6, 7 days like I used to. But I still love traveling. I love going to different parts of the world, kind of seeing the culture. I really love the food. That's my favorite part. That's how I read my experience. How good is your food? So I decided to go to Chile. I'm going to say it like 5 different ways during this video. So
whichever it is, we both are for sure.
Yeah. So I decided because the flights were affordable. I figured the event was going to be smaller. I wasn't sure how competitive the player base was going to be, but I knew it was going to be smaller. So I felt like at the very least, I could at least get the money for my trip back. And maybe if I was lucky, I'd get more. So I went with Aspira and one of my teammates, Anton Vahil, who I've known for some time. Unfortunately, Anton actually missed his flight. The craziest part was all these flights got delayed. And then what was happening is they didn't have the gates to let these flights come in. So Aspira made it with literal 10 minutes before we took off. Anton made it 5 minutes after the gate had closed. So his only option was he had to get a hotel, wait, and get another flight that was going to land at 6 a.m. that morning with the tournament starting at 9. So he was just like, all right, I can either go home or I can take the tournament. And they're like, no, we don't want to refund you, the airline. So he said, screw it. I'll take the flight. I'll get in at 6 a.m. And I mean, it was worth it. He made top 4. So
yeah.
Good for him. But other than that, it wasn't so bad. The way back, I had like a 1-hour delay. I mean, anything under 15 hours, I'm usually okay with, which this was 13. So it was perfectly acceptable. It's when I start getting over 20 hours that it starts to take its toll on you.
Yeah, at that point, it feels like you're either living in the airport or living up in the air, and just like, man, I just
Yeah.
want to be back on the ground at some point, right? Like, let me play some cards.
Yeah, the flight there surprisingly was real easy. I think I fell asleep for most of the flight, so it worked out great. Even if I didn't get a great night's rest. So yeah, I mean it was traveling wasn't so bad, but I like traveling. Some people hate the airport. Some people despise the idea of having to fly. I love it. I'm a big fan. So.
Absolutely the same. And I want to give a shout out to the LATAM community overall, right? I know that they've had some challenges with either getting product where the TO like oversold and then screwed people out of product for the launch event. And then there's been some distributors that have just fallen apart on their side. Like, there has been a lot of issues down there. But, you know, there was, I think it was around 70 players, if I remember correctly, that were able to play down in LATAM. So still at least some turnout for it.
There was 60 to be, or
okay.
59, I think was the exact number.
Okay, I think it was 70 reg and then 60 played or something like that. I know it was around those numbers.
Something like that.
So how did you feel about the matchup overall? Because again, a lot of us, you know, we don't have great visibility into what the other regions, you know, are doing for the events. And again, a huge shout out to you for going to Aspira for being able to report and give us the deck lists and whatnot. But, you know, we were hearing that there were some stories about the tournament promos and just not being accessible. So what was like the overall scene like on the ground, just from a how's the game growing competitively standpoint, or, you know, availability of product? Because it does seem like it's been an issue.
I know there was some people who were having trouble getting the promos. Now I can tell you, I played of LATAM players. I played a Pterosaurus player who had Sortosauruses. I played 2 yellow players who both had dual eagles. I don't think the white control player I played in Top Cut had Axe Spiders. But I think for a lot of people it is hard for it to be accessible. But for the competitive players, they were willing to just spend the money and get the cards. It does seem like some of it was not accessible, and I heard stories about that all day. I didn't have all my opponents' deck lists, so I couldn't see who had 4 ice shields and who didn't. I can tell you that nobody cast 4 ice shields against me, I don't think. So, I mean, it's possible they didn't. But most of the decks I played against were fairly standard. I didn't see very much missing. I'm sure, like I said, the numbers might have been wonky, but like the white decks were casting elephants against me. The yellow decks were doing everything a yellow deck does with all the cards they have. Like the Pterosaur decks most of them had Rex. Like I don't think I played a Pterosaur deck that didn't have Rex. So I mean, I can't speak to the numbers. We didn't have open deck lists in Top Cut, so I couldn't tell you like if anybody was playing anything real off there. But it seemed I heard a lot of people complain about the promos. So that was a very common thing I heard all day was that I didn't have the promos to play this, I didn't have the cards to play this, et cetera, et cetera. So whether that's due to accessibility, I understand that South American countries typically what their average earnings are and what ours are to spend $100 on a box of cards for an American versus someone from South America is very different. So,
So one interesting point I want to go back to that you mentioned, because I didn't know this, and as far as I know, all other events have had it. So, and I guess I'll have my disclaimer here too, is I am very pro open deck list, but I'm, learning this live, I guess. I had just assumed that it was open deck list for Top Cut, and I just want to, have a chance to ask you, and I know your thoughts, but just, for the record and all that stuff, what are your thoughts on the open deck list versus closed deck list for Top Cut, and kind of what is your preference there for future events?
So I'll just preface this with when we got into top 8, I asked about open deck list. They said no. I was under the impression it was in the TRM. So I messaged Roman. Roman goes, no, it's not in the TRM. We just do it as a courtesy if we have live stream. And that's what the head judge did too. He said, we didn't live stream this event. We're not going to have them. And I said, well, what if we put it to a vote? And he said, okay. He asked around. One player, I'm not going to single him out. I don't think that's fair. But one player didn't want to have open deck lists, I believe. But I mean, that's fine. I understand. I sort of understand why he didn't want to have them. So they just said, no, we're not going to do it. We're not doing open deck lists. And I'm fine with that. It's not mandatory. There was no stream. So I'll get into it more. But so let's talk about open deck lists and why I think you should do them no matter what. So, the first thing is, and this is probably, if anybody can take something away from this video, this is the most important part to me personally because it impacts tournament structure. So the first part of this is, what are open deck lists? Open deck lists, when you go into Top Cut, just says that both players at the start of every game get to see their opponent's deck list. So that's in between siding, that's at the start of the match. You get to see your opponent's whole deck list either on a piece of paper or a doc or whatever. And I am very pro open deck list, and there are two reasons for this. The first one is, I think that open deck list is always going to benefit the better player. The better player is always going to be able to make better use of the information that they are getting from open deck lists. So I would prefer, I think I'm a better player, at least I would hope so. I prefer to know exactly everything I have to play around as opposed to making guesses. Like, I think it does. The one thing that open deck lists do benefit is if you're playing some crazy tech and you think your opponent doesn't know about it, then you might want it to be a secret so you can kind of get them with that. Like if you're randomly playing Curse Dragon in a deck that would never play Curse Dragon, I could see why you might want closed deck lists. The other thing is stream. So if you're streaming, if you have to go on stream, you're at an inherent disadvantage because your deck, somebody can go and watch that stream and know everything you're playing. Now, this they've alleviated because they say anytime they stream, they're going to do open deck lists. So, okay, easy fix. The second issue with open deck lists. So I'm repping True Duelist, right? So we're rolling 6, 7, 8 deep every single event. Here's what I tell all of my friends to do when they're finished their matches is go and see who's playing what. Now, they don't allow that at most events, so you can't do that. But at events where they do allow you to walk around and spectate, what am I going to tell my friends to do? I'm going to tell them, hey, go check out other top player. Go see what he's playing right now. So we all have some idea, and we all do that. Now, most places do a pretty good job of forcing you out of the venue. But the other thing, too, you have to keep in mind is when I have 10 players with me, they're going to pair into the better players. And even if they lose, they're going to be able to give me information or the whole team information about what they're playing. So you can mitigate it a little bit by telling people, okay, they can't watch. And nobody's going to, for the most part, people don't break that rule. Sometimes people are watching in the aisles and judge don't notice. But for the most part, people are pretty good about that. But it doesn't matter because I'm 10 deep, and chances are I queued into you or one of my boys queued into you at some point during the tournament, especially if we're on like a deep run. So the problem is that let's say you Cosmic, you show up to the event and you're by yourself. Nobody's doing that work for you. Yep. You have no advantage, and you've gone to time every round, so you don't even have the chance. You're playing white control and you went to time every round, so you don't even get to walk around and look and see what the other players are playing, even if they did allow it. So and that's what everybody does. People go around, they look. If they have teams, they're telling their teams what people are playing. That's what absolutely everyone's doing if it's allowed. So you're inherently at a disadvantage just by showing up to the event by yourself. Whereas people in teams get this advantage, whether or not spectating is allowed, it doesn't matter. They're going to get this inherent advantage where they get to know what you're playing against. And for a lot of decks, that really matters. I think Pterosaurs is actually the #1 deck where it matters to know exactly what your opponent is doing. So,
yeah, scouting is just such a large part. You know, the 12 years or whatever it's been now between when I was doing Magic competitively and we had teams that would go from now swapping over to more content creation, not taking it as seriously, I guess, until it's like the night before. And obviously, if people are in the Discord, you see me sweating over it now because I think yellow has just fallen off with some of the couple of the deck lists that have popped up and been more refined lately. But you know, you have a chance that, especially for those of us that have been playing these games for a while, right? It's like, oh, we know Mark. Oh, we know Rich is on this deck or this deck or this deck. Like, it's very easy for people who have a team. You have a Discord chat. You just pop it up and say, oh, so-and-so is on X, so-and-so is on Y, so-and-so is on Z. And then you say, this is like the key tech card they picked in, right? And it's very easy for teams that have, especially with, again, shout out to True Duelist, who are almost always at the top tables. have a very, very good idea what everybody else is playing, including sideboarding, tips at that point. Now, again, I want to say, to be fair, at least for the one event that I've gone to so far, because obviously Ohio hasn't happened yet, time of this recording, they were trying to be pretty good about it with the Vegas launch event, where they were just kind of shooing people away from the play areas, and I do think that they'll do that in the future, but that is something to keep in mind. Like, you could never 100% get rid of scouting, because players and teams are naturally going to form and come together and share information that by the time you get to top 8, I mean, it very much makes sense to do open deck lists at that point. It's just, you have to accept that people are going to have more information than you over it, and it just helps create the level playing field for everyone. And then, as, Alex had mentioned, like, just let the better player hopefully come out on top of it, right? Variance is a thing and all that, but it creates such a better dynamic when both players know exactly what they have to play around and kind of what to look out for in each one of those matchups. And speaking about Rex, since you said that was such an important, deck to know what everyone's playing and kind of the tech choices they have, be it Swordosaurus or Feral Slash Main and, Suppression and Dream Bombs, there's a lot to kind of dig into there. And I guess we probably should have mentioned this up front, because this might be the first video people are seeing, but obviously Alex has done well both in the launch event and some other events that have come up, and has been playing Rex for a while, so maybe no surprise, but we're going to say it anyways. But Alex, tell us why you played Rex again for this event.
I mean, it's cut and dry the best deck. There's no Pterosaurus, Rex, whatever you want to call it, is hands down easily, I think, the best deck in this game currently, at least that's known to the general public. I know there's some talk of like a new white control deck or whatever that's come out, but as of right now, of everything I've seen personally, I truly believe that Pterosaurus Rex is the best deck. And the reason for that, there's a couple reasons. One, as I said before, when you know what you're playing against, it is the best deck. When you know what you have to execute against, you can always, Rex is so good at making adjustments to whatever it is you're playing against. It can easily just cover every dimension of every weakness. Now, that being said, the flaw to that is that some decks do a very linear thing. So White Aggro is a good example. White Aggro is a very linear deck, and typically always wants to do the same thing. It doesn't really, obviously knowing what your opponent's playing helps. It changes your lines a little bit, but for the most part, it's always doing the same thing. Pterosaurs have to adapt. They have to do different things. What you're doing versus purple and what you're doing versus white control are very drastically different things. And your turn 1 can change everything, depending on what deck you're playing against. So, great example. If you're playing against white aggro and I go first and I play Nexus, I have pretty much skipped my first turn. I've not only skipped my first turn, but I have also made their Durham Dine alive now.
Yep.
So, now I practically get to play the game with 1 less life. So versus if I'm playing against purple, I always want to start the game Nexus. I don't want to do anything but play Nexus turn 1, whether I go first or second. If I'm playing purple core control, I just 100% want to be starting Nexus. No questions asked. So, and these make a drastic difference. Like, example, if I go first and I start, let's say, Dino Man. Dino Man is at 1 core now, and if they play the spider, I don't remember his full name, but the spider that eats it. Yes, thank you. You can have a little pop-up that comes up on the screen. But if they play that, and I play Dynaman turn 1, they get to go deal a damage. I -1, and they kill my guy, so I have no reductions, and that's like a death sentence. So this is how these turn 1s can drastically impact how the game plays out for Pterosaurs. Whereas, like in say White Aggro, your turn 1 probably looks pretty similar. Like you're playing 1 guy, you're playing 2 guys, but it doesn't really you can only do one thing. Whereas Pterosaurs, there's a little bit more depth to it. Sometimes I want to play a 1-drop like a Rain Needle or a Dilophosa, or not Dilophosa, Overraptidon, because I want 3 cores on him because I'm setting my Starblessed draw, and if they play a Wind Summon, I can actually have the option to sacrifice my guy and draw 4. So there's all if let's say they play Cavalier on 1, I can then go, do I want to sack is it worth sacking my guy just to get the extra 4 cards here? So there are all these options. Curse Dragon, does my opponent have Curse Dragon? Well, I can't try to 4-wide aggro my opponent if they play Curse Dragon. Do they play Core Drain? Okay, now I know I need to load 4 cores on my Rex. There's so much that goes into knowing what your opponent is playing for pterosaurs, whereas I feel like some other decks, not all decks, but White Aggro is a great example. They just do the same everything every time. Like there's not a lot of adjustments for them based on what they're playing. Their turn one is not going to get them into a lot of trouble just because they made a slight, they didn't make the most optimal play turn one. Whereas pterosaurs, I really do feel like a bad turn one can lead to a loss.
Yep, and I do see this a lot locally, as well as players who are either picking up the deck or are maybe not as experienced in certain matchups, especially like purple, I feel, is one that you just have to pilot very well. And I was quite surprised because again, I skipped playing Rex for as long as possible, and I only picked it up, or I guess in the last month now. I can't believe we're in mid-June at the time of recording. And I was quite surprised with just how well it can transition into other game plans just by what the core 50-card deck wants to be doing. And it always had felt very, very strong in that regard in terms of just like having multiple outs to the format and kind of what you want to run into. And of course, there's some sideboarding options that you can get into that, might help out some other matchups. And, I'll have to look at the list again. I don't remember how much the sideboard has changed, but kind of leading into the next question here then is, what matchup are you hoping to avoid the most? Or, if we're thinking about Grand Open, Ohio is right around the corner. It's going to be one of the largest Grand Opens, probably one of the largest Grand Opens all year, if we're being honest. And it's going to be, hopefully a more open field and you can dodge something for quite a bit. So what is the number one deck that you want to dodge playing Rex and why?
As of right now, it's probably purple. And we've gone back and forth on, do we fix the main board to target purple a little more? Do we target the mirror? The mirror is kind of just random. And I feel at least somewhat confident because I played enough of it, but the skill ceiling feels very low in the mirror. That being said, it's not the match I'm most scared of because at worst, I'm just 50-50, right? Like, even if it's like the most random, and a mirror, the worst you can ever be is 50-50, right? Unless your opponent has some crazy tech, which I made 2 suppressions in all my lists, so I mean, it's not like I'm not up to date on the anti-aggro tech. So like at worst it's 50-50. Where I get a little sketched out is purple. And it's only because game 1 I think I'm so soft that I don't I've gone up to an extra nexus now. I think that's one change I'm going to make is I'm going to go to a 7th nexus in the main. I was talking to one of the players who did well in the online event. I think his name's Gary Hilton, and I'm sorry if I butchered his name, but we were talking while he was playing, and he was playing 8 nexuses in the main, and I was like, well, that's insane. Yeah, that's crazy, but I can see the merit for 7. I think he's at 7 now, too. But the way you play against purple is very different than the way you play against aggro decks. And how 100%. You just to give you a quick summation, what you want to do against purple is in the early game you want to stack nexuses. You want 2. Ideally, you want 1 Scorched Battlefield and 1 Volcanic Canyon. You want one of each of them. You want to get them down in like the first 2 turns. How you want to play against core control is you want to be playing your guys as cheaply as possible every turn, so you have as many cores as possible to keep on them. So that your guys aren't dying. What they want to do is try to clear your board every turn and just make your guys cost the most, so it kind of just is easy to keep removing your guys every single turn. So making them come in as cheaply as possible, because the nexuses are very hard for purple to destroy. Even if they play Burning Force, they have to pay 5 mana to do that. And that's a very big tempo loss where you're probably, outside of turn 1, you're probably paying 2 to 3 for your nexuses to come down. So, purple also has this very interesting and unique, well-designed card I like to call Netherworld Depths. And all of those things I just said were a lie. This is the worst design card in the game, in my opinion.
That's a take.
I can't
spicy! I love it.
It is the best. It is the best card in the game, but it is so. I think it was such a brain dead development decision. Now we have Burning Force, which red is there to keep it in check, sort of. And I'm not even saying it's the first card I would ban. But it is. I think it is a poorly designed card. It literally says when it is riding, you can't play the game. That's why purple is such a threat. Nothing purple does matters to me except that card. Now, core control is very annoying. Don't get me wrong. But you can power through the core control with enough Star Blasts. If your Volcanic Canyon's drawing you cards, you can ride that out. What you can't ride out is Netherworld Depths. And that's why I side extra Nexus removal. I side the Andromedas for this card because every time I lose to purple, it's the same culprit. Every time. It's you
It's a
can see
lot
me
of
getting
people.
angry. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can see me getting angry. It's Netherworld Depths. I think this card is so piss poorly designed. It's so overtuned. Now, do I think it needs to be banned? No, probably not, because I think it could have been changed. Like, I think maybe it should only say on like one person's turn. Like, it shouldn't be blocking and attacking is
Right.
more my issue. Like, it shouldn't do both. It should do one or the other. And I think then it's still a completely acceptable card. Um, and it's not like I'm hating against other colors. I think if I could change any card that exists in the game right now, the only card I would touch is Starblast Draw. I would make its when summon burst trigger, just say draw one card. That's the only thing I would change right now. Because I acknowledge that Starblast has forced when summon effects out of the game, and I don't think that's very healthy.
They're coming back whether we like it or not with green around the corner. So shoot, we're gonna see probably even more
Maybe.
Starblast pop back
Yeah.
up, because just like yellow, green can't avoid it. So it'll be interesting to see where green lands in 1-2 months after the set drops.
Purple, to go back to the question, I think purple is my scariest matchup. It's that white mid-range deck can get you a little bit, but I'm not as scared of that. C-Rex early are good. Purple is also unique in that in every matchup, your best card is usually Rex. Rex is just like this is the reason I picked this deck. Is Rex is just such a crazy card. It's so hard to deal with. Purple is the one exception to this rule, because the nice thing about Rex is he kills big guys and he can stay at one core. But in purple, they don't have any big guys that he gets to kill, and he can't stay at one core because all their removal is core based.
Yep.
So I think Rex is in that unique position. I actually side all four of my Rex out versus purple, and this is what I told. When I was talking to Gary this weekend when he's playing in the tournament. I said, Gary, take all your Rexes out. I side that out. Like, don't keep that in, because that card doesn't do anything. It costs too much to come down. Even if you have max reduction, it costs more than every other card in your deck. And the strength doesn't matter. Like, it's irrelevant. Like, I'm helping you guys out because I want you Rex players to beat the purple deck, so I don't have to play against that. So I think, like, maybe the second answer to that question might be white aggro if I don't know it's white aggro, because like I said, if I just go first and play Nexus first, which I typically want to do versus every deck except white aggro, I just die. So white aggro is another one, but when I have perfect information, white aggro is much less scary, whereas purple is scary no matter what. So I think, purple is the deck to look out for. There's a new kid on the block. I don't want to get too much into it, but that new Axe Spider, that new Axe Spider deck, I don't want to give my opinion just yet, not because I'm hiding anything from anyone, but because I haven't fully formed what I think is a good, well thought out, articulate opinion yet. So I want to keep that on the back burner. I think it's a deck to look out for, but I can't say much more than that until I do more testing with it.
Yeah, I've just started some early testing with it myself, and it is a grand open deck. And what I mean by that, it's kind of similar to white aggro, where if your opponent doesn't know what you're on, you probably automatically win a higher percentage of games than you would if it's more public knowledge. But I do think that's the Axe Spider deck is kind of interesting. But again, I played 2 decks against it now. We're going to be playing it more right after this. We finish up this recording. I have a buddy coming over to jam some more decks into it. And it's interesting. I'm the yellow player who's not playing yellow anymore because I can't draw Paradise, but then I'm trying to play an Axe Spider deck where it's like it is a night and day difference if you don't draw the Axe Spider. And shoot, I don't know if I can play that for 9 rounds of Swiss in Ohio and just have that consistency, right? Because, it has some draw cards, but ultimately, you have to hit the draw cards and live and see your elephant to draw more cards and ramp the cores to then play a second elephant to just hopefully draw more. And I am not that person to play that kind of a deck for a longer tournament, especially when red's like, okay, Starblast, okay, Nexus, purple's like, okay, when summons, okay, Nexus. Like, red and purple just have that consistency generators far above what we see in yellow and white, at least in set 1. Set 2 is looking kind of spicy for yellow, but we'll see. So moving on from that, just talking about the deck and kind of wrapping up last thoughts here overall, but is there any changes that you'd make to the deck, be it because you want to, target specific matchups, anything that felt weak? And I know it's kind of a rough question because I think that's the same exact 50 you ran previously, or was very close to what the other True Duelist guys were running.
It was very close. I think we were at I think for Chile, I changed 2 cards in the main. I think at Palm Springs I had Durham Dyna in the main, and that Durham Dyna became a fourth Star Blast. I assumed there was a lot of purple at the launch event, so I thought I'd play a lot of purple in Chile, and there was a lot of purple. I just didn't play any of them. There was 3 purple decks in Top Cut. I managed to. It literally Top Cut was 4 Rex, 1 white control, 3 purples. The 3 purples played the 3 Rexes. Crazy, not 1 Rex or purple deck played each other, so they all matched up, and I got to pull the lucky straw, and I got to play the white control deck, which, if you know, white control I think is one of Rex's easiest matchups.
Yeah, it's
So
funny how we talk about like, oh, I hate purple. I never want to see it. It's the worst thing ever. Okay, so by the way, I just got to dodge it the entire time. Like,
I never had
that's
to
how
play.
it goes.
When they were like, they're like top 4, and I'm looking around, and I was like, oh, what's in top 4? They're like 4 pterosaurs. I was like, great, not purple. Yep. So it was pretty nice that I was fortunate enough to dodge all those purple decks. I didn't play 1 in Swiss. I didn't play 1 in Top Cut. So who knows? I mean, I think you're favored. Don't get me wrong. I think all you have to see is like Star Bless and keep their depths away, and just kind of like, as long as you have a decent opening hand, whether it contains a Nexus, a Star Blast, or a Burning Force, I truly believe that you are favored in this matchup. It's just one of the trickier matchups to navigate. My issue with purple as a deck as a whole, personally, is I think it has some glaring weaknesses. Like, I do believe it has trouble with yellow at times, especially if you're playing with some of the versions that have opted not to play the Baculus Curse Dragon combo. So,
my quick thoughts on that too, because I know a lot of people ask me, like, yeah, it is a night and day difference. Like, if they're playing like the pure mid range, like Nemesis stuff, yeah, you're winning all day as yellow, and it feels great. If they're on the actual combo side of it, it's like, okay, we have 2 decks that want to play Exhaust Nexus versus Curse combo and Better Draw, and it's like, wow, I wonder which one's gonna win. Yeah, the one with Curse combo and Better Draw. 10 out of 10 times, like, but we've been seeing a lot more of the mid-range lately, so I'm very curious to see what's going to go down in Ohio, if we see kind of this resurgence of the full-on combo, or if mid-range is going to continue to be its thing. We'll see.
Yeah. So to answer your question, so one change I have discussed with a few others and myself internally is, do I go to a 7th Nexus? But that requires me to cut the creature. And the problem I always have with this deck, honestly, where this deck screws me the most, is just not seeing enough creatures, especially against decks where you really need them. Purple's a great example. You need to see creatures versus purple. Red, sort of, you need to see creatures. You need some creatures, but they don't get removed as often. Purple is the one you need to see creatures the most, because they're constantly just being removed. So you need to keep drawing and drawing creatures, especially since you side out more creatures than you put in. We're getting to the point where we almost have more non-creatures in the deck than creatures. So I'm thinking to myself, do I play a 7th Nexus to try to get these purple, to give me an edge versus these purple decks? Do I cut, and if that's the case, I'm cutting a Dragron Trooper, so do I just make that Dragron Trooper the 3rd Flamefish to give me an edge versus aggro decks, but then I'm down a creature? So it's a very fine balance, I think, between making sure I have enough creatures and making sure I have all the cards for my matchups and am well adjusted for that kind of stuff. Because if there's one thing I hate losing more than anything, it's losing game 1. I cannot stand losing game 1. Even if I back to my opponent, I really don't like losing game 1. So unless I have like silver bullets in the sideboard where it's just like, I know I cannot possibly lose games 2 and 3, it's not a feeling I feel comfortable with. So
yeah, really nobody likes being in that position at the end of the day. It's especially with some of these matchups that want to go to Rex, maybe less so, right, with having issues of running into time, but some of the decks and some of the matchups you can get can be very punishing with the way the time and end of match procedures work. So always trying to avoid those where you can is a huge plus.
Yeah, I think for the side, it's pretty much the same. I cited Dream Mom and it didn't do anything for me because I feel like my weight matchup is already so good. I mean, maybe you want to keep them in there for Axe Spider if you're like scared of that, but like, really the part of the side that always performs for me is just the purple side. That's the part that is always performing. The 4th Volcanic Break was awesome. I'm a big fan of the 4th Volcanic Break. So yeah, I mean, Counter Sword, it was. I've still yet to cast the card. I mean, it'll still probably be in my list come Ohio, but I don't know. I can't seem to cast Counter Sword. It comes in too. I just either there's a better. It's either in my hand and I already have a Star Blast or like an Ice Shield. I don't know. It never lines up. So Um,
Maybe one day we'll get the heal and the bounce off and win a match for it, but at least not yet. So
I've gotten the heal off twice now. I've got the heal off once actually. No, I got the heal off once, just casting it for the heal, and that was in like a local tournament. So I've yet to actually play the card.
So I guess that kind of leads into thinking about your future events, because you've already traveled to so many, and I guess it's probably a no-brainer, but I have to ask it anyways. Will you be making it down to Ohio for the Grand Open?
I will be in Ohio. I'll be in the UK too. I just booked my flight last night.
Nice.
So I will be at all of them. And if you want some personal advice to me, I was just talking about, how knowing what your opponent is playing against is so important. Well, you can probably mull assuming that I'm playing pterosaurs. So
that was going to be my next question.
That's your freebie for you. That's one thing I hate about playing pterosaurs every match is your opponent always knows what you're playing. So
yeah, you sit down, check the name. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna guess that they're on red. And you know what? It's 3 for 3 now, if I'm not mistaken. Just thinking back for all the Grand Opens, that it's like, yeah, we're just gonna keep jamming Rex as long as we can.
If you count like the locals, the online events, and the other random things I go to, it's like XO. Like I don't think I've ever. I think before the launch event, like in like the first month. When the first couple weeks where all the cards were previewed, I played yellow in like 2 online events, I think it was. And then, since release, I have never entered a tournament with anything but Rex. And I probably won't. Maybe I change like just for fun in Ohio, but chances are it's not happening. Like chances are I'm going to play Pterosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, you got the money, you got the invite, you got bragging rights. Like, what more do you need? Let somebody else win. Yeah. Shoot. Like
yeah, I think maybe for the UK, like if I was to change, it'd be at Ohio. And the reason for this is because Ohio, I think, is going to be so much bigger and harder to win.
Yep.
That I don't feel like try-harding, because not that I don't think my odds are good to win or anything, but if I'm going to have a fun event, I'd rather it be at one of the bigger ones. Whereas I think if I go to the UK, they're going to have like 100 players,
yep.
And I can just try hard there, and it's very realistic that I win. So, but chances are I'll just try hard at Ohio too and play Rex anyways, so it doesn't matter.
Probably. That's how it goes. Got to keep winning unless you find some new spice between now and then. But of course, I want to give a quick shout out, and I forgot if I did it at the beginning. We had a little error there in the recording, but back in live now and all the good stuff. If you want to, make sure you check out Aspira's video. He also had a interview with Alex talking about the deck and going in far more depth with card choices and all that good stuff. So again, as you just mentioned, if you want a kind of a leg up and a haha on him, like he's probably be playing Rex, so like go watch that video. I will link it in the comments. I think it's very much worth your time as a player if you're going to these Grand Opens to just hear from one of the best players in the game currently and what their thoughts on Rex and why they keep playing it. So with that kind of wrapping things up, I want to give you the chance to make a final shout out. If you want to plug a Twitter or anything like that where people can find you, you want to plug the team, anything like that, give you some 5 minutes just to say what you want to say here at the end.
I don't have a Twitter. I wasn't sure how big Battle Spirits was on Twitter, so I've made a Twitter like twice, like for Runeterra, and I couldn't do it. I wasn't sure how big the community was there, so I haven't bothered. But I do have a Discord. You can find my Discord. It's I don't even know the number, but it's Alexander the Greatest in our lovely Discord, which I'm sure Cosmic has linked here.
Comments down there.
Yeah,
it's in the description.
See in the description. You can see our lovely Discord. I'm very active there. I see all your comments on Facebook. I don't necessarily respond on Facebook. I will through Messenger. Please don't barrage me. I don't want to tell you how to play every single matchup with Red. No offense, guys. And yes, I have got like 3 of those messages since Sunday. So no offense to you guys, but I don't want to sit down and explain every little thing to you. Please watch these videos because they do a good job of explaining, at the very least, the basics. But I am a friendly guy. I'm always chatting. I'm happy to answer questions. You can message me, Alexander the Greatest. Like I said, I'm Alex Logan on Facebook, so you can find me there. I don't have a Twitter, and I probably never will unless Twitter really starts popping off of this game. Shout outs. I'll just shout out the whole team. So let me pull up the
my man's gotta get the roster.
Yeah, I'll pull up the roster. So going down in alphabetical order, Anton Vahil, my buddy, he came with us to Chile and he got top 4 as well on the same 60 I did. So congrats to him. Colin Kaiser, arguably the best player in the game right now. He's got 2 top 4s. He's been first seed He was first seed in Swiss at both the Vegas launch event and Palm Springs. So he's got to be up there. My boy Jalen, John Tata, who if you're in the Discord, you certainly know John because he never shuts the fuck up like me. All right. Well, so much for keeping.
No,
it
that's
PG.
the one. That's the one. It's all right.
That's our one F word. Yeah. Every PG-13 movie gets one F word, and that's our one. So.
For John. Oh my god.
Joe Ray, who had the original idea for the Pterosaur deck, how it started actually was just every free red guy in the game. It was 24 free guys, and then like a few nexuses and spells, and it kind of just evolved into the Pterosaur's deck. So shout out him. My brother Nick Blandin, who does absolutely nothing. I love you, Nick. My day one testing partner, every new game I've ever played ever. Ryan Valentino. He is like the number one testing guy. Like he's every single day I'm playing with him, like 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Anytime there's a new card game, the first person I hit up is Valentino. So shout out Ryan Valentino. And then last but not least, Steve Silverman. You also suck, dude. You don't do anything, but you're still my boy. So I'll give you a shout out.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. So yep, that's it. And then of course, Aspira for my being my my travel buddy
chaperone for
as
the
well.
weekend.
Chaperone for the weekend. I'm sure I forgot someone, so I apologize if I did. But thank you so much. That's about it, though.
Perfect. Well, with that, I'm just going to wrap up things here again. Huge shout out to Alex for being able to join us. Huge shout for winning the Grand Open. Probably going to go win a couple more between now and the end of the year because of all the events that we have coming up, and obviously going to be traveling some more. But with that, lots to look forward to. Spoiler season is underway. We need to see some Magic and Nexus cards before I'll actually do a video on them because it doesn't feel like there's anything to do a video on right now. So hopefully more of that in the future. But otherwise, I'll just say hope to see you in the next video. Summoners, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.